Once upon a time, 6 strangers traveled far and found a village. They saw men lounging and lazing, playing games, farting and fighting, trying to break the world record for the most people up a single tree. The men invited the strangers to join them, as it was feast time. They humbly accepted, taking a place of honor at the communal fire. And then a most bizarre thing happened. Trays of food appeared, carried by disembodied hands. The hands set their burdens down, then left. As the men pounced on the banquet, the strangers tried to see where the hands went. Finally, when the belching grew louder than the devouring, the strangers asked to understand the mystery of the hands. The men laughed and wondered whether there were no women in the strangers' own land. The strangers replied that there most assuredly were. The men laughed and said they had their doubts, since the strangers obviously didn't recognize a woman when a whole gaggle passed by. Realizing they meant the hands, the strangers said that women were fantastically different in their own land. The men laughed and asked whether they meant they were more lazy. The strangers asked whether these hands were the entire women, or was there more? The men said they wouldn't have a village for long without the other women. The strangers asked to meet these women. The men said it was time for drinking and dancing and singing, but they would have the runt show one of the strangers. The runt merrily led the way to 3 large structures at the outskirts of the village. They entered the first, where the women's hands were preparing more drink. From behind them, a group of hands came in carrying the tools of the field, and then set to work cleaning the remains of the feast. The runt led the stranger into the second structure, where the hands were caring for the village children. Entering the third structure, the stranger's eyes boggled as he looked upon a row of wombs in varying states of fecundity. A group of hands were gathered around the fullest womb, which was birthing its contents. 4 teensy hands slid easily out. "Twins!" the runt cried. He said the men would be disappointed it was just girls. The stranger asked whether there were any other kind of women. The runt said no. The stranger asked of heads or legs. The runt said there were stories of such things, but they were only fairy tales. He said he was going to ejaculate into a womb while he had a chance, and asked the stranger to tell him if anyone was coming. The following morning, the strangers gathered to discuss what they had seen. They decided to disband, as there were 4 roads and 1 river out of town, and separately they could investigate this new world more quickly. One of them would stay in the village. A week later, the first of the strangers returned. He said he had found the women's feet. They were being used to float a continent. The third stranger returned soon after, saying he had found the women's breasts. They were being used as beds in a village where men took naps 7 times a day. The 4th stranger returned soon after, saying he had found the women's heads. They were being used to secretly unravel the secrets of infinity. The 5th stranger returned soon after, saying he had found the women's cunts. A village of artisans were using them to inspire the most beautiful architecture the world had ever seen. The 6th stranger returned soon after, saying he had found the women's hearts. They were being used to keep the men from killing all the monkeys in the trees and the fish in the seas, from killing all the plants that grow and rivers that flow, all the birds in the sky and all the babies that cry, and to stop the men, finally, from killing themselves. The strangers gathered and began planning the work of making women whole once again.